President, Excellencies, on 31st of October, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea announced through its official news agencies that it had launched Hwasong-19 intercontinental ballistic missiles at approximately 7:11 a.m. local time earlier that day. With a flight duration of 1 hour and 26 minutes, the missile flew a distance of approximately 1,000 kilometers, reaching an altitude of over 7,000 kilometers before falling into the sea. The DPRK described this latest launch as a very crucial test that updated the recent records of the strategic missile capability of the DPRK. Regrettably, the DPRK did not issue any airspace or maritime safety notifications, posing a serious risk to international civil aviation and maritime traffic, with the potential for unintended incidents. Madam President, since the DPRK announced its 5-year military development plan in January 2021, aimed at acquiring new military capabilities, it has launched at least 11 ICBMs. The Hwasong-19 sets new records in terms of flight duration and altitude, and is the second solid-fuel ICBM developed by the DPRK, which does not need to undergo fueling prior to launch. It is reported to be larger than its predecessor, the Hwasong-18, and may be capable of carrying larger warheads or even multiple warheads. Madam President, the DPRK's launch of yet another ICBM is of serious concern and represents a grave threat to regional stability. Despite numerous meetings of the Security Council in 2023 and 2024, the DPRK has not heeded calls to refrain from further launches. The Secretary General strongly condemned the Hwasong-19 launch by the DPRK as a clear violation of relevant Security Council resolutions. He again called for de-escalation, the full implementation of relevant Security Council resolutions, an environment that is conducive to dialogue, and the resumption of talks, emphasizing that diplomatic engagement remains the only pathway to sustainable peace and the complete and verifiable denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. Madam President, we remain deeply concerned about growing tensions on the Korean Peninsula. The DPRK's persistent pursuit of nuclear weapons and ballistic missile programs in violation of relevant Security Council resolutions continues to undermine the global nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation regime and the Treaty of the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons that underpins it. There is crucial need for practical measures to reduce tensions and reverse this dangerous trajectory. We encourage all member states to seek unity and to create an environment conducive to dialogue and cooperation. At this challenging juncture for securing global peace and security, it is imperative to prioritize de-escalation and work toward a stable and secure Korean Peninsula. Madam President, the United Nations and its partners stand ready to assist the DPRK in addressing the basic needs of its populations. We call on the DPRK authorities to facilitate the full return of United Nations resident coordinator and the UN country team. A collective return of the international community would enhance international support for the people of the DPRK and facilitate progress toward the implementation of the 2030 agenda. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank Mr. Chiari for his briefing, and I now give the floor to those council members who wish to make statements. I give the floor to the representative of the United States.
Thank you, Madam President. And may I just say before beginning, I want to congratulate you on assuming the presidency, and please know that my delegation looks forward to working with you closely as you carry out your duties. I want to thank you, Assistant Secretary General Chiari, for your briefing. The United States condemns in the strongest possible terms the DPRK's October 30 launch of an intercontinental ballistic missile in direct violation of multiple UN Security Council resolutions. The DPRK continues to advance its unlawful ballistic missile program and has now launched well over 100 ballistic missiles since the beginning of 2022. Each of these tests is a flagrant violation of UN Security Council resolutions. Each test informs the DPRK of its capability gaps and allows Pyongyang to further advance its weapons programs. These are unacceptable attempts to undermine global peace and security and make us all less safe. This Council has a responsibility to hold the DPRK accountable. Yet, we are here again today because two members of this Council, China and Russia, have repeatedly shielded the DPRK, contributing to the normalization of these tests and emboldening the DPRK to further violate this Council's sanctions and resolutions. Despite being permanent members of this Council, Russia and China have shamelessly protected Pyongyang from any reprisal or even condemnation of its actions. In March, Russia handed Kim Jong-un the gift of terminating the 1718 Committee panel of experts as the DPRK supplies ballistic missiles and other weapons to Russia for its brutal war against Ukraine. China, with its abstention on the panel's mandate renewal, clearly showed the world where it stands on curbing DPRK proliferation. Shielded from closer scrutiny of its sanctions-violating activities by Moscow and Beijing, Pyongyang, unsurprisingly, has been emboldened to continue advancing its unlawful ballistic missile, nuclear, and WMD programs. But Russia's willingness to openly violate this Council's sanctions resolutions and to jeopardize international peace and security knows no bounds, as Russia is unlawfully training DPRK soldiers in its territory. The DPRK has sent some 10,000 soldiers to Russia. Russian forces have trained these DPRK soldiers in artillery operations, UAV operations, and basic infantry operations. DPRK soldiers receiving or providing any training or other assistance related to the use of ballistic missiles or other arms is a direct violation of Security Council resolutions 1718, 1874, and 2270. These latest egregious acts come as Russia and the DPRK continue to violate these same resolutions by transferring lethal DPRK weapons to Russia. Weapons Russia has used against Ukraine, including against civilian targets. We have not yet seen DPRK soldiers deploy into combat against Ukraine's forces, but we expect them to do so in the coming days. The nature of the training Russia is providing to these forces, to include trench clearing, indicates Russia intends to use these forces in frontline operations. If these troops engage in combat or combat support operations against Ukraine, they would render themselves legitimate military targets. And let's be clear, if DPRK soldiers do enter into combat, this would demonstrate Russia's growing desperation in its war against Ukraine. It would also demonstrate an unprecedented level of direct military cooperation between Russia and the DPRK, with security implications in Europe as well as in the Indo-Pacific. All members of this Council used to consistently condemn the DPRK's serious and intensifying threat to international peace and security. All members of this Council used to be fully committed to upholding the Security Council resolutions that seek to safeguard international peace and security. But China and Russia now block the Security Council from speaking against the DPRK's behavior. These recent developments threaten us all. Colleagues, all member states have an obligation to faithfully implement the legally binding measures under Security Council resolutions. To my Russian and Chinese colleagues, it is time to stop obstructing and rejoin the rest of us in voicing a united and clear denunciation of the DPRK's behavior, to call on all UN member states to fully and faithfully implement Security Council resolutions, and to work together to prevent the DPRK's procurement activities and revenue flows, supporting its unlawful WMD and ballistic missile programs. Colleagues, in response to recent developments, the United States introduced a press statement which sought to condemn DPRK's intercontinental ballistic missile in direct violation of this Council's resolutions. It is unfortunate that Russia and China could not join us in voicing a united denunciation and to uphold the Council's legally binding measures that seek to safeguard international peace and security. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank the representative of the United States for their statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of France.
Madame la Présidente, je remercie M. Chiari pour son exposé. Le 30 octobre dernier, la Corée du Nord a procédé au lancement d'un missile balistique de portée intercontinentale. Celui-ci aurait atteint une altitude supérieure à 7600 km avant de s'abîmer en mer au large du Japon. La France condamne ce tir, comme l'a fait le secrétaire général des Nations Unies. Nous assurons la Corée du Sud et le Japon de notre pleine solidarité face à cette nouvelle provocation. Ce tir vient s'ajouter à une longue série de violations des résolutions de ce Conseil. Depuis 2022, la Corée du Nord s'est livrée à plus de 100 lancements de missiles balistiques, dont plusieurs de portée intercontinentale, et elle a placé en orbite un satellite militaire en utilisant des technologies balistiques. Dans le même temps, elle n'a cessé de durcir sa rhétorique nucléaire. En septembre 2023, elle inscrivait dans sa constitution la détention de l'arme nucléaire. Le régime nord-coréen s'est vanté que le lancement du 30 octobre avait démontré au monde le caractère irréversible de ses progrès dans la mise au point de vecteurs d'armes nucléaires. Dans ces conditions, qui peut prétendre, comme l'a fait le ministre russe des Affaires étrangères, que la dénucléarisation de la Corée du Nord serait une question close? Depuis des mois, la Russie accorde à la Corée du Nord une couverture diplomatique en échange de son soutien pour poursuivre sa guerre d'agression contre l'Ukraine. Des missiles balistiques nord-coréens ont déjà été livrés à la Russie et utilisés en Ukraine en violation des résolutions de ce Conseil. Nous sommes préoccupés par le récent déploiement en Russie de troupes nord-coréennes. Il représente une escalade dans le soutien de la Corée du Nord à l'agression de la Russie. La France rappelle que toute participation de soldats nord-coréens à une guerre d'agression contre un État souverain serait une violation du droit international et de la Charte des Nations Unies. En échange de ce soutien, la Russie offre impunité et assistance à la Corée du Nord dans le développement de ses programmes illégaux. Elle a opposé son veto au renouvellement du groupe d'experts du comité 17-18 qui travaillait depuis plus de 15 ans sur les violations des sanctions établies par ce Conseil. Nous ne pouvons que nous inquiéter des autres contreparties que Pyongyang pourrait demander en matière de coopération militaire et technologique. Il est de la responsabilité de la Russie de mettre fin dès à présent à ce rapprochement militaire illicite et de ne pas se détourner de ses responsabilités de membre permanent du Conseil de sécurité. Le renforcement des programmes nucléaires et balistiques nord-coréens menace la stabilité de la péninsule nord-coréenne, fragilise le régime international de non-prolifération, met en cause la paix et la sécurité internationale. Nul n'y a intérêt. Madame la Présidente, la France appelle une nouvelle fois la Corée du Nord et l'ensemble des États membres des Nations Unies à se conformer aux obligations édictées par la résolution du Conseil de sécurité. Elle demande à la Corée du Nord de cesser ses actions déstabilisatrices, de s'engager enfin dans la voie du dialogue en vue d'une dénucléarisation complète, irréversible et vérifiable, et à donner la priorité au bien-être de sa population plutôt qu'au développement de son arsenal nucléaire, en accélérant la réouverture de ses frontières et le retour des acteurs humanitaires. Je vous remercie.
I thank the representative of France for their statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Japan.
Thank you, Madam President. I congratulate your assumption of the presidency of the Security Council this month. And also, I thank you for convening this critical meeting requested by 7 Council members, including Japan. And I also thank ASG Chiari for the briefing. I must begin with our strong condemnation of yet another launch of an ICBM-class missile by North Korea in violation of multiple Security Council resolutions. The latest ICBM is estimated to have landed in the waters near Japan, around only 200 kilometers from the island of Hokkaido. This ICBM launch is more threatening than ever, as it reached a height of over 7,000 kilometers and a flight time of about 86 minutes, the highest and longest length trajectory of any missile that North Korea has launched to date. Also, its estimated range capability of 15,000 kilometers covers 3/4 of the globe. This launch has deteriorated the not only regional but the entire global security situation even further, and has brought the gravest threat yet from North Korea to all citizens of the region and beyond. I reiterate the launches of ballistic missiles by North Korea are undermining the international peace and security that the UN Charter has given this Council the primary responsibility to maintain. I urge all Council members to reaffirm our commitment to the Charter, the supreme instrument of the world peace, and to express a united and strong response to this unprovoked incident. Madam President, let me take this opportunity to stress the fact that North Korea continues to develop its unlawful nuclear and ballistic missile programs, unabatedly violating Security Council resolutions. Half a year has passed since the UNSC's 1780 Committee panel of experts was forced to terminate its mandate due to the regrettable veto by Russia. Since then, its military cooperation with North Korea has stepped up, including a recent development of North Korea's troops being dispatched to Russia. We cannot just be silent as we see continued violations and evasions of the Security Council resolutions across a variety of arenas. Thus, Japan, together with like-minded countries, decided to launch a new mechanism, the Multilateral Sanctions Monitoring Team, with a view to filling the significant void that the POE has left behind and to assisting the full implementation of relevant Council resolutions. Madam President, we have just discussed this issue last week, but I once again have to raise the point that the military cooperation between Russia and North Korea poses a great concern to the international community. We have seen the malfunction of Russia's procurement of ballistic missiles from North Korea, as well as the training of North Korean soldiers, both of which constitute serious violations of relevant Security Council resolutions, and North Korea's involvement in Russia's unprovoked war of aggression against Ukraine would constitute a grave violation of international law, including the UN Charter. We carefully listened to the Russia and North Korea's delegations last week at the Security Council meeting on maintaining peace and security in Ukraine, where they said their cooperation can be justified as a right of sovereign states, but this recent unlawful military cooperation will never be justified in any case, at any time, anywhere in the world. Madam President, North Korea has continued to ignore and deny its obligations by pursuing its military ambition at the expense of welfare of people in North Korea, even amidst their great unmet needs. We also should not ignore North Korea's violations and abuses of human rights, including those of abductees of Japan and detainees of the Republic of Korea. I conclude by once again strongly urging North Korea not to conduct further launches and to immediately and fully comply with all relevant Security Council resolutions, as well as to engage in diplomacy and accept the repeated offers of dialogue. I thank you, Madam President.
I thank the representative of Japan for their statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Malta.
Thank you, Madam President, and I begin on congratulating you on assuming the presidency of the Security Council and by thanking Switzerland for steering our work in October. I also thank ASG Chiari for his informative and sobering briefing today. Madam President, Malta joined the request for this meeting following the latest provocation by the DPRK. We firmly believe that this Council must stand united in condemning such dangerous acts, which constitute blatant violations of Security Council resolutions. Last week, the DPRK tested a solid-fuel intercontinental ballistic missile. It reportedly flew for 86 minutes, the longest ever recorded by the DPRK. It also seems to have reached an altitude of over 7,000 kilometers. This means that if launched at a wider angle, such a missile could reach any place on Earth. This is a deeply worrisome advancement in the DPRK's unlawful ballistic missile program, and it cannot go unanswered. Malta strongly condemns this latest ICBM test by the DPRK. We also condemn the deployment of troops and provision of arms to Russia in support of its war of aggression against Ukraine, in violation of the UN Charter and the fundamental principles of international law. Such actions are also in violation of multiple Security Council resolutions and pose a grave threat to peace and stability in the peninsula and beyond. When Council members came together to collectively tackle this grave threat to non-proliferation, a comprehensive set of sanctions was put in place. In contrast, the latest developments demonstrates that the Council's inaction emboldens the DPRK. Earlier this year, the mandate of the 1718 Committee panel of experts was terminated. Since then, the DPRK's dangerous actions have gone unchecked. Although the panel is gone, nevertheless, sanctions remain in place and must continue to be fully implemented by all member states. Any transfer of weapons, ammunition, and related technology to and from the DPRK is illegal and must be condemned. Once more, we urge the DPRK to cease its unlawful and dangerous behavior, engage in meaningful dialogue, and immediately comply with its obligations under Security Council resolutions. It must completely, verifiably, and irreversibly abandon its nuclear and ballistic missile program and return immediately to the full compliance with the NPT as a non-nuclear weapon state. Madam President, it is regrettable that the DPRK continues to prioritize its military build-up over the well-being of its people. Not only is its unlawful WMD program developed and accelerated through grave human rights violations, but the regime's scarce resources are being diverted from addressing the real needs of the population. Malta remains deeply concerned about the dire humanitarian situation in the country, with over 10 million people in need of assistance. We commend the work of the 1718 Committee, which aims to curb the DPRK's military ambitions while addressing the humanitarian needs of the population by establishing a mechanism for granting humanitarian exemptions. We reiterate our call on the DPRK to allow the UN and other agencies into the country to provide much-needed humanitarian assistance. To conclude, Madam President, we once again reaffirm the need for a comprehensive and lasting peace in the Korean Peninsula. To achieve this, the Council must be united and send an unequivocal message to the DPRK. I thank you, Madam President.
I thank the representative of Malta for their statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of the Republic of Korea.
Thank you, Madam President. I also thank ASG Mr. Chiari for his briefing. Colleagues, we gather once again in this chamber after we discussed DPRK's dispatch of troops to Russia last week. Then we expressed our serious concern and called on Russia and DPRK to stop illegal military cooperation. However, our repeated calls for restraint were once again ignored by Pyongyang. North Korea launched another ICBM right after our meeting last Wednesday. Its intention could be to distract the world's attention from its troops in Russia, demonstrate themselves as larger than life, or gain diplomatic leverage amid the U.S. presidential election. Regardless of the intention, it was clearly an attempt to advance its missile technology, which makes the launch another flagrant violation of multiple Security Council resolutions. The Republic of Korea condemns it in the strongest possible terms. Madam President, with its new solid fuel ICBM, the so-called Hwasong-19, the DPRK broke the record of its previous ICBM launches in terms of flight time, 86 minutes, and apogee, about 7,700 kilometers. Kim Jong-un himself oversaw the launch at the site and said that, I quote, "The DPRK will never change its policy of strengthening its nuclear forces," unquote. This launch once again raises a fundamental question. How can an impoverished pariah regime continue to develop such diverse ballistic missile programs despite the rigorous sanctions regime, Security Council sanctions regime? The answer is that there must be large loopholes enabling the DPRK's access to the equipment, materials, and technology necessary to advance its WMD programs. Some may point out that the DPRK's nuclear and ballistic missile program is an exemplary case of the Security Council's failure. However, it is indeed a textbook case which demonstrates what the world will face when member states do not fully implement Security Council resolutions. Madam President, upon joining the Security Council last January, we proposed to update the prohibited items lists related to the NSG, Nuclear Suppliers Group, and the MTCR, Missile Technology Control Regime, pursuant to Resolution 2087 and 2094, which had been neglected for the past several years. The lists are directly aimed at curbing North Korea's WMD program. It doesn't impose additional sanctions. However, after months of deliberations, the 1718 committee failed to update the lists due to the opposition by 2 permanent members of the Security Council. This is a good example of how large loopholes are created in the DPRK sanctions regime. Madam President, we already saw Russia dissolve the 1718 committee panel of experts. Then we also heard the Russian foreign minister saying that he considers the denuclearization of the DPRK to be a closed case. I have a very simple question. Cui bono? Obviously, it is the DPRK and Russia who have been continuing their illegal arms deals. The DPRK is the only country that has conducted nuclear tests this century, not once, but already 6 times. It is also the only country that abused the NPT regime by joining, then violating the treaty from within, and then announcing its withdrawal from the treaty. And no other UN member states rejected Security Council resolutions so shamelessly as the DPRK. Once the NPT regime begins to erode and ultimately collapses, it will be extremely difficult to restore it. The repercussion will have a deep and lasting impact on international peace and security, and the permanent members of the Security Council will not be immune to it either. In this regard, we would like to bring to the attention of other member states that the MSMT, Multilateral Sanctions Monitoring Team, a newly established multilateral mechanism to replace the 1718 Committee panel of experts, will assist the full implementation of UN sanctions on the DPRK by monitoring and reporting violations thereof. The Republic of Korea calls on all member states to join such international efforts to fill in the gap created by Russia's veto on the renewal of the panel's mandate. Madam President, since I'm sure that the DPRK representative will soon repeat the erroneous and misleading arguments underpinned by the so-called DPRK's security dilemma caused by the US and ROK, let me shed some light on the fallacies of that groundless narrative often echoed by the DPRK and its few friends. The reality that North Korea has faced for a long time is, in fact, not a security dilemma, but the regime survival dilemma. It is about the constant struggle to sustain the family dynasty spanning through 3 generations. Pyongyang goes to great lengths, taking extreme and draconian measures to keep afloat the world's most bizarre dictatorship, fully aware that it is ultimately unsustainable. That is why the DPRK constantly instills the fear of the outside and imposes the worst totalitarian ideology on its own people, while simultaneously isolating itself from the outside world. To that end, the regime has to fabricate and reinforce anti-US, anti-ROK narratives, and relentlessly develop nuclear weapons to take on the far more advanced opponents. Recently, we see more desperate and dangerous moves by Pyongyang. Earlier this year, the DPRK leader, Kim Jong-un, redefined the ROK. Its fellow nations sharing the same culture, heritage, and language for thousands of years, suddenly as a foreign state overnight. Last month, they completely cut off the existing railways and the roads linking the South and North by detonating them. We know why. The regime has always feared direct contact with the outside world, in particular its neighboring free and prosperous fellow nation. It fears what will happen if North Koreans continue to compare themselves with their brothers and sisters in the South. And now, the desperate DPRK is demanding more sacrifices from its own people by dispatching troops to Russia. The North Korean foreign minister even referred to Russia's invasion of Ukraine as a just and holy war during her visit to Moscow last week. The union of these 2 desperate nations is exceptionally alarming, especially as they repeatedly disregard the UN Charter, violate the Security Council resolutions, and even possess nuclear weapons. The international community, including the Republic of Korea, stands ready to help the DPRK. But without solving its own regime survival dilemma, the DPRK cannot extricate itself from the abyss. Provocations and the pursuit of nuclear and ballistic missile programs will only aggravate Pyongyang's hardship and dilemma. Pyongyang's friends must help the DPRK help themselves. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank the representative of the Republic of Korea for their statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Switzerland.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Nous remercions le sous-secrétaire général Chiari pour son exposé et saluons la participation de la République populaire démocratique de Corée à nos délibérations. La Suisse condamne le lancement d'un missile balistique de portée intercontinentale, apparemment d'un nouveau type qui serait capable de transporter de multiples ogives nucléaires. Le développement et l'opérationnalisation continue de vecteurs nucléaires par la RPDC représentent, conjointement avec son programme nucléaire, une menace pour toute la communauté internationale. Ce test s'inscrit dans une situation sécuritaire tendue et la Suisse est préoccupée par le risque d'escalade inhérent à un tel acte. L'emploi d'armes nucléaires provoquerait des conséquences humanitaires catastrophiques. Nous devons renforcer nos efforts en faveur de la non-prolifération, du désarmement et du maintien du tabou nucléaire. Face à ces défis répétés, nous ne saurions fléchir de notre devoir collectif. C'est pourquoi ce Conseil doit assumer ses responsabilités. Je tiens à en souligner 3 aspects. Premièrement, ces tirs sont une violation de résolutions juridiquement contraignantes du Conseil de sécurité et donc du droit international. Il est ainsi de notre devoir collectif de condamner les essais de missiles balistiques de la RPDC. Celle-ci est tenue de mettre en œuvre ses obligations en vertu des résolutions de ce Conseil, ainsi que de prendre des mesures concrètes en vue d'abandonner ses armes nucléaires, ses missiles balistiques et ses programmes connexes de manière complète, vérifiable et irréversible. Nous rappelons que si les obligations découlant des résolutions valent en premier lieu pour la RPDC, Ces dernières s'appliquent également à tous les autres États qui sont tenus de mettre en œuvre de manière effective les sanctions de ce Conseil. À ce titre, nous sommes profondément préoccupés par les rapports faisant état de possibles violations graves des résolutions de ce Conseil par la Russie que nous avons évoquées la semaine dernière. Deuxièmement, la population de la RPDC ne doit pas être laissée pour compte. Les violations graves et systématiques des droits de l'homme et l'impunité des auteurs doivent cesser. Il existe un lien entre le programme nucléaire et certaines violations de ces droits, et le Conseil devrait examiner de quelle manière il pourrait aborder davantage ce lien. Nous saluons les signes d'assouplissement des lourdes restrictions mises en place par la RPDC en lien avec la pandémie. Ces restrictions ne doivent plus être un obstacle majeur à l'assistance humanitaire. L'ouverture des frontières de la RPDC doit aller de pair avec un accès rapide, sûr et sans entrave de l'aide humanitaire. Pour y parvenir, l'entrée en RPDC du personnel international est essentielle. Troisièmement, le Conseil et les Nations Unies dans leur ensemble ont un rôle important à jouer afin d'encourager le dialogue, la désescalade et la recherche de solutions diplomatiques. Il existe une volonté de mener un dialogue avec la RPDC ainsi que de soutenir ses efforts de dialogue, et nous saluons toute tentative d'échange entre les parties ainsi que toute mesure de désescalade de leur part. Nous encourageons le recours au bon office du secrétaire général et nous appelons à la RPDC à engager un dialogue constructif avec le Conseil et le système onusien. Madame la Présidente, le désarmement et la non-prolifération nucléaire ont toujours été une priorité de l'ONU et de ce Conseil. Et dans le cadre du pacte pour le futur, nous nous sommes tous engagés à les renforcer et prévenir toute érosion des normes internationales existantes. Nous ne devons pas échouer dans cette tâche. Pour trouver une solution politique, le Conseil doit sortir de son silence. Pour être effectif, l'appel au dialogue doit s'articuler autour d'une position unie. La Suisse encourage et soutient tous les efforts en ce sens. La Suisse, pour sa part, continuera son engagement au sein du Conseil, du Comité des sanctions et sur place pour une péninsule coréenne dénucléarisée et en paix. Je vous remercie.
I thank the representative of Switzerland for their statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Guyana.
Thank you, Madam President. I thank Assistant Secretary General Khalid Kiari for his briefing and welcome the participation of the representative of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea in this meeting. Guyana condemns the ongoing violations of UN Security Council resolutions. We remain alarmed by the continued launches of ballistic missiles by the DPRK in violation of relevant Security Council resolutions, including the recent launch of an intercontinental ballistic missile on the 30th of October. We note with concern that these launches not only increase the security threat to neighboring countries, but also serve to undermine the global non-proliferation regime. Madam President, we have seen in recent months the catastrophic consequences following escalations of tensions in other regions and underscore the need to avoid a similar situation occurring on the Korean Peninsula and the region at large. In this regard, Guyana once again calls upon the parties to engage in dialogue and diplomacy towards resolving the tensions and ensuring peace on the peninsula. We urge the government of the DPRK to comply fully with all Council resolutions and to abandon its ballistic missile program, along with all other existing weapons of mass destruction in a complete, verifiable, and irreversible manner. Guyana remains firm in its conviction that the only way to prevent the use or threat of use of nuclear weapons is through their total elimination. We reiterate our belief that the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula is key to achieving this objective and is critical for the furtherance of international peace and security. Allow me to conclude by reaffirming Guyana's firm commitment to the implementation of the Security Council resolutions relating to the DPRK, including through support for the work of the 1718 Sanctions Committee. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Guyana for their statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Mozambique.
Thank you, Madam President. I wish to start by thanking the United Kingdom's presidency for convening this briefing and extend our appreciation to the United States, France, Japan, Malta, Republic of Korea, Slovenia, and UK for requesting this session. I also wish to thank Mr. Khaled Kiari, Assistant Secretary General for Middle East, Asia, and the Pacific for his comprehensive briefing on the topic under consideration. We acknowledge the presence of the representative of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea at this meeting. Madam President, the complex dynamics of the situation on the Korean Peninsula necessitates careful and measured actions. We must emphasize that any unilateral measures and inflammatory rhetoric will only serve to escalate tensions. The latest developments and reports indicate that the Democratic People's Republic of Korea has conducted a test launch of an advanced new intercontinental ballistic missile, achieving unprecedented altitude and flight duration compared to previous launches. Subsequently, the United States, South Korea, and Japan have conducted trilateral military exercise to demonstrate their preparedness and determination to address North Korea's advancing missiles programs. These concerning developments have prompted increased scrutiny and condemnation from the international community, further escalating regional tensions. This situation highlights the urgent need for enhanced international cooperation and renewed commitment to diplomatic solutions. In this context, Mozambique urgently calls for and encourages genuine dialogue and mutual understanding among the parties to reduce tensions and build trust, essential for achieving lasting stability in the Korean Peninsula and the broader region. Madam President, while the immediate focus of this briefing centers on the Korean Peninsula, we must acknowledge that the broader discourse on non-proliferation and denuclearization among member states has acquired unprecedented urgency, as diminishing trust between nations has led to accelerated nuclear militarization, posing a grave threat to international peace and security. The Treaty on Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons remains the fundamental framework for global efforts to prevent the nuclear weapons proliferation and advanced disarmament objectives. The potential of nuclear weapons and the devastating consequences of nuclear war remain unequivocally clear to the international community. To this end, it is imperative to comprehensively address the underlying political, security, and humanitarian dimension through diplomacy and constructive dialogue, while remaining cognizant of the legitimate security concerns of all parties. The ultimate goal of complete denuclearization requires genuine and sustained engagement from all parties. We therefore hope that diplomatic efforts will gain traction and ultimately yield enduring peace in the Korean Peninsula and beyond. The Security Council and its members should play a crucial role in facilitating this process. I thank you, Madam President.
I thank the representative of Mozambique for their statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Ecuador.
Gracias, Presidenta, y agradezco la exposición informativa del subsecretario Chiari. El Ecuador condena el reciente lanzamiento de un misil balístico intercontinental por parte de la República Popular Democrática de Corea, como lo ha hecho el secretario general y la mayor parte de la comunidad internacional. Mi delegación se solidariza con las poblaciones de la República de Corea y Japón por los riesgos que deben enfrentar con este tipo de lanzamientos. Este último lanzamiento, por su duración y trayectoria, confirma el mejoramiento de las capacidades de la RPDC en el desarrollo de misiles balísticos, lo cual es alarmante. Las pruebas de misiles balísticos constituyen una seria amenaza para la paz y seguridad internacionales. Constituyen, además, una clara violación de múltiples resoluciones de este Consejo de Seguridad, incluyendo las resoluciones 1718, 1874 y 2397, por lo que no tienen justificación y no pueden ser normalizadas. Este Consejo no puede permanecer indiferente ante estos actos de provocación que amenazan la estabilidad regional e internacional. El Ecuador ha sido testigo del tratamiento de esta temática en los últimos 2 años, notando la falta de consistencia y voz unificada de este Consejo en el necesario rechazo al incumplimiento de sus resoluciones en esta materia. Por ello, expreso mi respetuosa exhortación a los miembros con mayor influencia con la RPDC a restaurar el compromiso de todas las partes a evitar que las tensiones se exacerben. El Ecuador reafirma su compromiso con los principios de la Carta de las Naciones Unidas, especialmente el desarme y la arquitectura de no proliferación nuclear global. La desnuclearización completa, verificable e irreversible de la península de Corea es hoy más urgente que nunca. Por ello, concluyo reiterando el llamado del Ecuador a la RPDC a que abandone sus programas nuclear y de misiles balísticos y a que retome el camino de la cooperación y el diálogo de buena fe y la diplomacia. Gracias, Presidenta.
I thank the representative of Ecuador for their statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Sierra Leone.
Thank you, Madam President. Let me also thank Mr. Khaled Kiari, Assistant Secretary General for the Middle East, Asia, and the Pacific for his concise briefing. We welcome the participation of the representative of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea in this meeting. Sierra Leone is concerned about the Democratic People's Republic of Korea's recent launch of an ICBM, the Hwasong-19, with a capability and range that poses serious regional and global security threats. The fact that the missile went higher in altitude and flew longer for a total of 86 minutes, more than any previous attempt, is also deeply concerning. Additionally, statements by the DPRK state officials are especially troubling, including by the head of state, referring to the weapon as its final and ultimate ICBM, quote-unquote, and that, quote-unquote, the DPRK will never change its line of bolstering up its nuclear forces. The current situation in the Korean Peninsula remains highly volatile, with potential for further escalation. The DPRK's long-range missile and nuclear programs continue to pose serious challenges to peace and security in the region. We continue to urge the DPRK to refrain from further escalatory measures and to engage in constructive dialogue aimed at de-escalation. The international community should remain committed to upholding peace and security in the region. We call upon all parties involved to prioritize diplomatic efforts and to work collaboratively towards a lasting resolution that addresses the underlying tensions. We also call on states with influence to engage DPRK authorities on working towards solutions for lasting peace in the Korean Peninsula. Sierra Leone is of the firm view that a strong and unified Council response to the latest missile launch will reinforce our commitment to denuclearization and a peaceful resolution of conflicts, particularly in the Korean Peninsula. We stand ready to support all diplomatic initiatives and encourage the DPRK to engage bilaterally and multilaterally to unequivocally commit to transparent, complete, verifiable, irreversible, and non-discriminatory nuclear disarmament. The DPRK's blatant disregard and open violation of Security Council resolutions and the UN Charter undermines the authority of the organizations and remains a significant challenge for the international community. While efforts over the years have not succeeded in convincing authorities to comply with the global safeguards and de facto international norm against nuclear testing, a strong independent verification mechanism is still necessary to ensure that the DPRK meets its international obligations. In this regard, we wish to recall the importance of the work and report of the panel of experts and the regrettable non-renewal of the panel's mandate. We take note of the creation of the multilateral sanctions monitoring team for implementation of the UN Security Council resolutions regarding the DPRK, with the stated goal to assist with the full implementation of UN sanctions on the DPRK by publishing information based on rigorous inquiry into sanctions violations and evasion attempts. Additionally, we reiterate our call for the comprehensive nuclear test ban treaty's entry into force, noting its valuable contribution to halting further modernization, an increase in vertical and horizontal proliferation of nuclear weapons, thereby advancing the goal of nuclear disarmament. We conclude, Madam President, by echoing our previous call for the need for a holistic and comprehensive assessment of the nuclear programs of the DPRK, drawing upon the global effort for non-proliferation to promote international peace and security. As Sierra Leone reaffirms its unwavering commitment to the principles of disarmament, non-proliferation, and international peace and security, we reiterate our support for diplomatic efforts towards complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization of the DPRK and the Korean Peninsula. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Sierra Leone for their statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Slovenia.
Thank you, Madam President. I also wish to thank Under-Secretary General Chiari for his briefing. Let me make a couple of points on behalf of my delegation. One, Slovenia strongly condemns the October 31st launch of an intercontinental ballistic missile by the DPRK. This is a blatant violation of multiple Security Council resolutions. DPRK has demonstrated numerous times it simply does not care about Security Council actions. A country who illegally developed nuclear weapons and has demonstrated with the latest launch that it can deliver them virtually anywhere in the Northern Hemisphere. This is a clear and provocative threat to peace and security in the region and worldwide. The Security Council resolutions are binding and must be implemented. They are not guidelines that can be unilaterally dropped when they do not fit the contemporary political agenda. DPRK must ensure their implementation, abandon its WMD and ballistic missile programs in a complete, verifiable, and irreversible manner, and cease all related activities. 2. Slovenia is gravely concerned with the trajectory the North Korean non-proliferation issue is taking. Throughout the last year, the situation grew consistently worse. The DPRK showed ever greater disregard for rules and has continued with ballistic missile tests and satellite launches. The work of the 1718 panel of experts was single-handedly put to an end with a veto. Evidence of DPRK origin ballistic missile use in Ukraine surfaced. Deeply concerning statements about DPRK's nuclear status were uttered.
And to top everything off, reports of DPRK troops deployment to Europe emerged. We desperately need a change of course. It would be too easy to point a finger just at one member of this Council, whose actions have been particularly damaging to the situation. However, I'm looking at all the Council members here. It is our collective responsibility to uphold international peace and security, and DPRK's activities are clearly undermining it. Madam President, the status quo we are experiencing is conducive to nothing but the expansion of DPRK's illegal nuclear weapons and ballistic missile program. It is our duty to employ all diplomatic means to bring the DPRK back to the negotiating table. It is high time for DPRK to cease its provocative activities and return to dialogue and diplomacy. There is no legitimate alternative to this. The sooner we all realize this, the faster we will be able to comprehensively address the imperative of DPRK's denuclearization. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank the representative of Slovenia for their statement, and I give the floor to the representative of China.
谢谢主席。我祝贺英国担任北约安理会轮值主席。我感谢基亚利助理秘书长的通报，欢迎朝鲜常驻代表出席今天的会议。中方注意到朝鲜日前的发射活动和有关表态，也注意到其他各方的反应。当前半岛局势持续紧张，对立对抗不断加剧，这不符合任何一方的利益。作为半岛近邻，中方希望半岛和平稳定，不愿看到半岛陷入动荡甚至生战生乱。中方呼吁所有各方从维护半岛以及全球和平稳定大局出发，保持冷静克制，避免矛盾激化升级，共同努力推动局势尽快缓和降温。主席，半岛问题由来已久，错综复杂，本质是安全问题，根源在于冷战残余未消，和平机制未立，美朝互信缺失。当务之急是所有各方都秉持理性务实态度，推动建立互信，为局势降温创造有利氛围。要从根本上解决半岛问题，中方秉持公正客观立场提出的双轨并行思路和分阶段同步走原则，目前看仍是现实可行的。遗憾的是，个别国家执迷于冷战思维和零和博弈，大肆推进地缘战略，强化军事同盟，挑动阵营对抗，这同半岛实现停核机制转换的历史任务背道而驰，同地区国家求稳定、求合作、促发展的共同愿望背道而驰。特别需要指出的是，美国声称要维护国际核不扩散体系，实现半岛无核化，自身却在半岛不断加大部署战略力量，强化延伸威慑安排，甚至在美英澳三边核潜艇合作框架下，向无核武器国家转让数以吨计的武器级高浓油。美国还在菲律宾部署中程导弹系统，并谋求将部署进一步扩大至东北亚地区，这等于把威胁推进到中国等地区国家的家门口，严重破坏了地区安全局势，打破了战略安全平衡。我们敦促美方立即停止这种危险的错误行径，撤销并放弃有关部署。主席，中方始终认为，安理会应在半岛问题上发挥建设性作用，应采取切实措施推动缓和局势，增进互信， 而不是简单的制裁施压。当前形势下，安理会需要的是团结一致，不是分裂对立；需要的是促进对话，不是为了发生而发生，更不是为了激化矛盾。有关国家应该拿出具体行动和可行方案，为推进半岛政治解决进程做出实质努力，而不是利用安理会加强对抗。我愿重申，一个和平稳定的朝鲜半岛符合有关各方共同利益，也是国际社会的普遍期待。中国作为半岛近邻和负责任大国，将继续以自己的方式，为维护半岛和平稳定、实现东北亚地区长治久安发挥建设性作用。谢谢主席。
I thank the representative of China for their statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of the Russian Federation.
Госпожа председатель, приветствуем участие в заседании постоянного представителя Корейской Народно-Демократической Республики. Заслушали доклад помощника генерального секретаря Халеда Хияри. Вынуждены отметить, что в нем вновь не оказалось хоть сколько-нибудь содержательных оценок происходящего. В корейских делах коллективный Запад методично использует площадку СБ, чтобы выставить Пхеньян ответственным за деградацию ситуации на полуострове. В создании такой искаженной картины сыграл свою роль и секретариат ООН, игнорировавший внешний контекст событий. Даже в текущей, столь острой фазе развития ситуации на Корейском полуострове ООНовцы предпочитают повторять одни и те же тезисы с критикой Пхеньяна и закрывать глаза на провокации со стороны его противников. Тем самым они становятся соучастниками негативного сценария. Не ожидали и не услышали мы ничего нового и от группы стран, запросивших сегодняшнее заседание. Цель созыва каждый раз одна и та же – сделать еще один шаг по демонизации КНДР. Нам было бы интересно послушать от самих инициаторов о влиянии хоть одного такого заседания на урегулирование проблем полуострова. Может быть, из их уст за этот период прозвучало хоть одно конструктивное предложение, нацеленное на создание условий для запуска диалога? Ответ очевиден каждому в этом зале. Создание вокруг Пхеньяна негативного информационного шума, удержание на плаву неработающих санкционных мер, оправдание агрессивных шагов США и их союзников в регионе – вот истинные мотивы инициаторов заседания. Хочу только напомнить, что к мандату Совета Безопасности эти задачи не имеют никакого отношения. Напротив, подобными действиями наши коллеги лишь прямо подрывают деятельность Совета Безопасности, который, согласно Уставу ООН, призван поддерживать международный мир и безопасность. Вашингтон и другие заинтересованные страны могли бы с таким же успехом продолжить вести свою пропагандистскую работу через подконтрольные СМИ и НПО. Госпожа председатель, ракетные испытания, вызывающие такое волнение в Вашингтоне, Токио и Сеуле, происходят не на пустом месте, не в пресловутом вакууме. Их нельзя рассматривать отдельно от агрессивных планов американцев и их сателлитов в регионе, а именно от масштабных военных маневров, сопровождаемых размещением американского стратегического потенциала, совместного ядерного планирования США и Республики Корея с отработкой ядерных ударов по территории КНДР, выстраивание военно-политического треугольника Вашингтон-Сеул-Токио. Давайте посмотрим на действия США и их союзников в Северо-Восточной Азии только за последние недели. 28 октября начались беспрецедентные по своему охвату военные учения ВВС США, Австралии и Республики Корея Freedom Flag. В рамках данных маневров задействованы сотни единиц авиатехники, сухопутные силы, морская пехота и спецназ. Параллельно в Республике Корея продолжаются крупнейшие учения национальных вооруженных сил Хогук с подключением американских военных подразделений. С юга в сторону КНДР продолжают вестись опасные провокации с применением военных дронов, совершивших за последние 3 месяца более 230 вылетов в северокорейское воздушное пространство в нарушение суверенитета страны. Указанные агрессивные меры ведутся в дополнение к ставшим уже регулярными учениям под названием Freedom Shield, Freedom Edge. Стоит напомнить, что в рамках этих маневров последовательно отрабатываются сценарии гипотетического вооруженного конфликта с применением ядерного оружия и физического устранения северокорейского руководства. Помимо военных кампаний, противники Пхеньяна продолжают оказывать на него всевозможное политическое и экономическое давление в нарушение Устава ООН. Долгие годы незаконные западные односторонние санкции напрямую ухудшают положение простых людей. Рестрикции Совета застыли во времени и не отражают проблем полуострова. Все предложения со стороны России и Китая по актуализации мер СБ неоднократно отвергались и продолжают отвергаться как не соответствующие американским интересам по планомерному удушению Пхеньяна. Сожалеем, что наши многолетние друзья и партнеры в Сеуле стремительно утрачивают независимость под нажимом Вашингтона, ставя под удар собственные национальные интересы. Судя по всему, они стали втягиваться и в опасные авантюры Вашингтона по наращиванию поставок западного оружия Киеву, который на фоне своих боевых потерь очень в нем нуждается. Характерно, что именно украинская тема стала одной из основных в ходе консультаций советников по нацбезопасности США, Японии и Южной Кореи 25 октября в Кэмп-Дэвидском формате. Получается, что, проводя агрессивную политику на Корейском полуострове, американцы заодно решают свои задачи по мобилизации союзников против России. Это многое говорит об истинных мотивах США в отношении субрегиона. Призываем южнокорейских коллег одуматься и не вставать на крайне опасный путь, который ни к чему хорошему Сеул не приведет. Тем более, что по данным южнокорейских исследований, уверенное большинство населения страны не поддерживает отправку вооружений на Украину. Госпожа председатель, политика создания управляемой напряженности на Корейском полуострове преподносится властями в Вашингтоне как рутинные мероприятия по обеспечению безопасности США и их союзников. Однако американские власти не хотят признавать простой истины о том, что безопасность одного государства не может обеспечиваться за счет безопасности другого. Ни в Европе, ни в Азии. Руководство КНДР имеет полное право на применение мер по обеспечению безопасности и суверенитета своей страны. Заключенный 19 июня договор о всеобъемлющем стратегическом партнерстве между нашими странами призван сыграть в регионе стабилизирующую роль на основе принципа неделимости безопасности, снизить риск рецидива войны на полуострове, в том числе с применением ядерных средств, стать одним из элементов устойчивой архитектуры безопасности в регионе. Положения договора, включая статью 4 о взаимной поддержке в случае вооруженного нападения, при необходимости будут выполнены в полном объеме. Соглашение соответствует Уставу ООН, а меры, которые могут быть предприняты в его реализацию, дело российско-северокорейских двусторонних отношений. Не намерены мы поддерживать и несбалансированные инициативы в Совете Безопасности, выстроенные на базе осуждения КНДР или возложения на нее исключительной ответственности за обострение кризиса на полуострове. Госпожа председатель, неудивительно, что некоторые члены СБ сегодня вновь повторяли свои спекуляции относительно направления в Россию неких подразделений северокорейских военнослужащих. Причем в сообщениях подконтрольных Западу СМИ цифры растут день ото дня, видимо, вместе с увеличивающимся страхом и беспокойством этих стран. Отметился сбивающим с толку заявлением насчет этих сообщений и генсекретарь ООН. Удивительно, что, подыгрывая сейчас западным странам в интернационализации украинского конфликта, он никогда не высказывался с такой же озабоченностью о постоянно наращиваемой номенклатуре все более дальнобойных западных вооружений Украине, в дискуссиях о том, можно или нельзя бить в глубину российской территории, не говоря уже о практике отправки военнослужащих армий стран НАТО в зону конфликта на Украине. И это при том, что хорошо известно, что там находятся сотни, если не тысячи натовских военных, причем не наемников, а инструкторов и офицеров, ответственных за использование высокоточного оружия или вооруженных беспилотников в Черном море. Или видел ли кто-нибудь заявление секретариата ООН с озабоченностью поставками американского оружия в зону Палестино-израильского конфликта? Западные страны повторяют свои тезисы о том, что это другое. Однако понимают ли они, что эти вопиющие двойные стандарты и столь наглая демонстрация исключительности и вседозволенности хорошо видны всему международному сообществу? Возвращаясь же к ситуации на Корейском полуострове, хотели бы вновь констатировать, Совету Безопасности следует кардинально пересмотреть подходы, чтобы вывести ситуацию из опасного тупика, а не усугублять ее еще больше. Мы не раз говорили, с каких направлений можно было бы начать движение к нормализации. Но для этого в западных столицах должны коренным образом перенастроить мышление, которое в интеллектуальном плане застряло где-то во временах Холодной войны. Об этом, в частности, свидетельствуют попытки узкой группы стран вдохнуть хоть какую-то жизнь в так называемое объединенное командование, изначально мертворожденный реликт давно ушедшей эпохи. Из этой же серии всевозможные западноцентричные междусобойчики, сами себя наделяющие регулирующими и наблюдательными функциями, в том числе в ущерб уставным прерогативам Совета Безопасности. Все это проявление застарелых пороков колониальной политики Запада в Азии, от которой ему придется отказаться. Я благодарю за внимание.
I thank the representative of the Russian Federation for their statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Algeria.
شكرا سيد الرئيس. أود في البداية أن أتقدم بخالص الشكر إلى السيد خالد خياري على إحاطته القيمة. كما أرحب بحضور الممثل الدائم لجمهورية كوريا الشعبية الديمقراطية. إن التطورات الأخيرة في شبه الجزيرة الكورية تعكس التعقيدات المعاصرة، حيث تؤدي تصرفات طرف واحد إلى تداعيات تؤثر على الآخرين، وحيث تتشابك المخاوف الأمنية مع الاحتياجات الإنسانية، وحيث يبدو أن الطريق نحو السلام يزداد تعقيدا. سيد الرئيس، لقد أثار إطلاق الصاروخ الباليستي العابر للقارات في 31 من أكتوبر الفارط مخاوف واسعة لدى المجتمع الدولي، مما زاد التوتر في منطقة تعاني من هشاشة واضحة، وهدد الأسس التي يقوم عليها إطار عدم الانتشار. غير أنه من الضروري النظر إلى الصورة الأكبر في هذا السياق. إن التوجه نحو التسلح المتزايد في المنطقة والتحركات العسكرية الواسعة ونشر المعدات الاستراتيجية كلها عوامل تسهم في إشعال حلقة من التصعيد لا تخدم مصالح أي طرف. نحن نشهد اتجاها قد يؤدي إلى تصعيد غير قابل للتحكم في تداعياته، ونلاحظ تصعيدا يهدد بانفجار الوضع في منطقة بأكملها، كما نرى وضعا إنسانيا يتطلب تدخلا عاجلا. سيد الرئيس، علمنا التاريخ أن النزاعات لها كلفة باهظة، وأن الحوار أيضا يحمل في طياته قدرة على إحداث التحول المنشود. 3 مبادئ رئيسية ينبغي أن توجه مسارنا نحو المستقبل في هذه القضية. أولاً، التصعيد العسكري لن يؤدي إلى الحل المنشود. ثانياً، العقوبات وحدها لا يمكن أن تخلق سلاماً مستداما. ثالثاً، الحوار مهما بدا صعباً يظل الوسيلة الأقوى لتحقيق الحل. للأسف الواقع الذي نواجهه قاتم. التوترات العسكرية في تصاعد مستمر، الاحتياجات الإنسانية تتفاقم وتصبح أكثر إلحاحاً، القنوات الدبلوماسية غير مستغلة كما يجب، والمدنيون هم من يتحملون العبء الأكبر. يجب أن يتغير هذا الواقع، وفي هذا الإطار ينبغي اتخاذ خطوات عملية تضمن ما يلي. أولاً، يجب على جميع الأطراف العمل على تخفيف التوترات وتقليل الأنشطة العسكرية فوراً في المنطقة. ثانياً، ينبغي استئناف الاتصالات الدبلوماسية وفتح باب الحوار دون شروط مسبقة. ثالثاً، يجب تعزيز القنوات الإنسانية وحمايتها. رابعاً، ينبغي تطبيق تدابير بناء الثقة. خامساً، يجب تأسيس آليات للحوار الإقليمي تشمل كافة الأطراف المعنية. هذه ليست مجرد تطلعات، بل هي متطلبات لتحقيق السلام. السيد الرئيس، لا يمكننا تجاهل البعد الإنساني. كل يوم يمر بدون سلام هو يوم آخر تتزايد فيه معاناة المدنيين. كل يوم تحرم فيه الشعوب من تلبية احتياجاتها الأساسية هو يوم آخر لا يتمكن فيه العاملون في المجال الإنساني من أداء دورهم الحيوي. هذا الوضع غير مستدام. السيد الرئيس، نحن نقف بحزم ضد أي إجراءات تنتهك قرارات مجلس الأمن، ونرفض أي خطوات تهدد الأمن الدولي، لكننا ندرك أيضاً أن السلام لا يمكن تحقيقه من خلال العقوبات وحدها. إن هدفنا المشترك يظل نزع السلاح النووي بالكامل من شبه الجزيرة الكورية بطريقة شاملة وقابلة للتحقق فيها ولا رجعة فيها. إلا أن هذا الهدف يجب أن يسعى إليه بالوسائل السلمية، وأن يبقى الحوار هو أداة أساسية لتحقيقه. ندعو جميع الأطراف إلى تجنب التصعيد، إلى اختيار الحوار بدلاً من المواجهة، إلى تفضيل الدبلوماسية على استعراض القوة، وإلى وضع مصلحة الشعوب في المقام الأول. الطريق إلى الأمام واضح رغم ما يحفه من صعوبات. إنه طريق يتطلب الشجاعة لاختيار الحوار في ظل التوترات، ويتطلب الصبر عندما يبدو التقدم بطيئاً، ويحتاج الالتزام حين تبدو العقبات غير قابلة للتجاوز. لكن هذا هو السبيل الوحيد نحو سلام دائم. الاختيار بأيدينا، فلنختر السلام على التصعيد المستمر. التوترات ليست حتمية، والسلام ليس بعيد المنال. وشكرا.
I thank the representative of Algeria for their statement. I shall now make a statement in my capacity as the representative of the United Kingdom. I'd like to start by thanking ASG Chiari for his briefing today. The United Kingdom unequivocally condemns the DPRK's latest intercontinental ballistic missile launch. This was the longest launch ever conducted by the DPRK, lasting 86 minutes. This is yet another egregious violation of multiple UN Security Council resolutions. It shows that the DPRK continues to advance its illegal nuclear and ballistic weapons programs, posing a clear threat to global peace and security. In 2024 alone, the DPRK has recklessly launched one failed satellite, 2 intermediate-range ballistic missiles, and at least 36 short-range ballistic missiles. The DPRK also attempted to launch 1 multiple independently targeted re-entry vehicle. Year by year, the DPRK flaunts its growing nuclear capabilities. Yet still, some Council members prevent us from speaking out with one voice. This strategy of silence has failed. It is time for us to act, to defend the global non-proliferation architecture, to uphold the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, and to deliver on the mandate of this Council to address the most pressing threats to peace and security. Colleagues, it is less than a week since we discussed the DPRK's flagrant violations of UN Security Council resolutions. The Russian Foreign Minister alarmingly said that, I quote, "Applying the term denuclearization to DPRK no longer makes any sense. This is off the table." End of quote. This statement of fiction, alongside Russia's veto of the 1718 Committee's panel of experts earlier this year, has emboldened the DPRK to continue its unlawful behaviour, knowing it has immunity from a permanent member of this Council. So, I call on Russia and all members of this Council to condemn this launch and restate their commitment to implementing all relevant Council resolutions. I urge the DPRK to abandon its illegal nuclear and ballistic weapons programs, which are diverting resources away from improving the lives of the DPRK's people. The UK is committed to securing peace on the Korean Peninsula. We call on the DPRK to take up repeated offers from the United States and the Republic of Korea towards dialogue. Diplomacy is the only route to sustained peace on the peninsula. I resume my function as President of the Council, and I now give the floor to the representative of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea.
Thank you, Madam President. On June 4, 2024, exactly 5 months ago from today, the intercontinental ballistic missile was launched by one of the permanent members of the UN Security Council present here at this chamber and landed in Pacific Ocean. Yet, Security Council did not regard this weapons test as a threat to international peace and security. On October 31st, 2024, test fire of the ICBM Hwasong 19 was conducted by the Democratic People's Republic of Korea within the area around the Korean Peninsula, and it has no slightest negative impact on the security of the neighboring countries. Notwithstanding this, UN Security Council, at the request of the United States, a perpetrator of a mentioned ICBM launched, and its satellite forces convened this meeting today to take issue with the DPRK's ICBM test fire. It entirely runs counter to the spirit of the UN Charter with sovereign equality and non-interference in domestic affairs at its core, and it sets example of the extreme double standard. I resolutely denounce the holding of another unlawful meeting by UN Security Council, infringing upon legitimate sovereign right of the DPRK at the instigation of the United States and its follower. Like all strategic weapon tests we have conducted so far, the test launch of our ICBM Hwasong 19 this time is a part of the exercise of the just and legitimate right to self-defense to reliably safeguard security of our state, as well as peace of the region and world against escalating reckless nuclear war threats of hostile forces. Some countries are now talking about violation of the resolution at every opportunity, regarding sanctioned resolution against TPRK as a cure-all prescription. However, these resolutions are nothing but illegal documents, totally going against the principle of the sovereign equality of the UN charters, as they stipulate not only the TPRK is prohibited from ballistic missile launches, which United States and many other countries normally do. It is indeed extreme manifestation of illogic that can never be understood with common sense to disparage the just and legitimate exercise of the TPRK's right to self-defense, which cause no harm to the neighboring countries. Whereas inhumane atrocity committed by Israel are justified as the exercise of the right to self-defense, which massacre tens of thousands of civilians in Gaza Strip and turned the whole Middle East into the sheer hell by expanding the battlefields to Lebanon and Iran. The United States and ROK stage war drills involving strategic nuclear assets while recklessly clamoring about hysterical vote like end of a region. These military provocations are indeed the threat to global peace and security, which should be addressed by Security Council without delay, as they constitute dangerous acts that invite the disaster of the nuclear war in and around the Korean Peninsula. In the here and now, the anti-TPRK confrontational schemes of the United States and its satellite forces in Korean Peninsula are more reckless, provocative, and dangerous than at any time in history. US-ROK alliance with a 17 years crime-ridden history has evolved today into nuclear-based military bloc and nuclear war alliance, both in name and reality. It leads qualitative change in terms of the nuclear threat to DPRK and security environment of the Korean Peninsula. It opens up wide possibilities of nuclear war. Moreover, tripartite joint military exercise of the United States, Japan, and ROK targeting the DPRK are conducted on the regular and systematic basis from this year. Illegal and unlawful UN command is being reformed into practical war command. This worrisome reality is a testament to who are destroyer of the security environment of the Korean Peninsula. It is extreme double standard and blatant infringement on our national sovereignty and dignity to turn blind eye to excessive military maneuver of the countries hostile to DPRK, but instead make an issue of our just and legitimate exercise of the right to self-defense to deter them. The Comrade Kim Jong-un, President of State Affairs of DPRK, said that only the peace that can be defended by powerful strengths enough to control the enemy is reliable, secure, and durable peace. And herein lies the sheer guarantee for peace and future of the DPRK and her people. The prevailing security environment of the DPRK and ever-increasing prospective threats and challenges require us to make sustained efforts to maintain and enhance strategic power capable of deterring the enemy and controlling situation in the responsible way. It is immutable law proved by history that destruction of the balance of power inevitably gives rise to a war. It is only to natural and logic in the view of the theory of the balance to steadily grow military supremacy to deter ongoing external threat. We will accelerate and will not let up on build up our nuclear force that can counter any threat presented by hostile nuclear weapon states. There will ever and never be any change in this line. As responsible nuclear weapon state, the DPRK, will in the future too discharge its responsibility and the role to safeguard the peace and stability of Korean Peninsula, Northeast Asia, and the rest of the world, and to establish an independent and peaceful international order based on respect for sovereignty, non-interference in internal affairs, justice, and equality. I thank you.
I thank the representative of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea for their statement. The representative of the United States has asked for the floor to make a further statement. I give them the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam President, and I apologize for taking the floor second time, but I need to address a few points that have been raised here. First and foremost, just for those who may not be aware, the DPRK is under sanctions by the United Nations Security Council, not the United States. As the DPRK representative said here, that this meeting of the Council is illegal. The Council is not holding an illegal meeting, as he maintains. DPRK is on the Council's agenda. It is sanctioned by the Council. So I would just say to the DPRK representative, he should read the charter, and if he needs a copy of it, we can certainly get that for him. To address a couple of points that were raised by the representative of China here. With regards to engagement with DPRK, the United States has repeatedly offered to have unconditional talks with the DPRK. Every time that we have made this point and reached out our hand, it was met by a clenched fist. To our Russian colleague, the point about why is DPRK, the issue of DPRK being raised in a meeting here. DPRK, again, poses a threat to international peace and security. Russia has agreed to resolutions that clearly identified DPRK as a threat to international peace and security. So that situation with regard to DPRK has only worsened. Therefore, we think it is important for this council to convene to discuss these issues. Just going back to my Chinese colleague, he raised the issue of AUKUS. AUKUS has not been engaged in any type of activity that runs counter to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. He knows that. This issue has been raised before, and we have addressed it very clearly. I would agree with our Chinese colleague that the Council should provide a unified message position on the question of DPRK. The problem has been, at least for the last 2 years, Russia and China have prevented the Council from issuing any kind of a document on the situation in DPRK. In fact, we have tried several times to get just the basic press elements out, factual press elements. They have not agreed to do that. Our military, U.S. military exercises with its allies, we have said many, many times in the past, these exercises are defensive in nature, they are transparent, they are long-standing, and do not pose a threat to DPRK. Again, we have offered to hold talks with DPRK repeatedly, and they have been rejected. What I would just say to our Russian and Chinese friends is, with the trajectory of DPRK's nuclear weapons and ballistic missile programs, you cannot expect the United States to stand back and allow this type of growing threat to our security to go without a response. So we will continue to take measures that are necessary to protect our security and those of our allies. The issue of sanctions has been raised. We believe in having unconditional talks with DPRK, but we are not going to reward DPRK for coming back to the table by giving them something. What kind of a message does that send to would-be proliferators in the future? My last point. Last week, and this was an issue that was just raised this morning by the representative of the Russian Federation, this issue about DPRK troops in Russia. I asked the Russian representative whether or not there are DPRK troops in Russia. I did not receive a response at all. I asked the question again today only because it was raised by the representative of the Russian Federation. Are there DPRK troops in Russia? Thank you, Madam President.
I thank the representative of the United States for their statement. The representative of China has asked for the floor to make a further statement. I give them the floor.
谢谢主席。朝鲜半岛问题延宕多年，核心是美朝矛盾。解决问题的钥匙在美国手里。事实上，这个过去多年的这个历史，让我们有充分的理由怀疑，美国是否真心想缓和半岛的紧张局势，还是想以此为抓手，来实现它更大的这个地缘政治目的。如果美心真心的想打破目前的僵局，他应该知道该怎么办。我觉得他们应该知道，要想打破这个目前的僵局，应该摆脱集团政治，挑动阵营对抗，停止动辄军事演习、不断威胁施压的错误做法。只有这样，才能推动半岛局势的缓和，为对话、和平解决目前我们所面临的这些危机，奠定基础。关于这个安理会发生问题，我们中方已经多次阐明我们的立场。安理会处理半岛问题的出发点应该是缓和局势，而不是激化矛盾。一味的呼吁制裁施压，无助于局势的缓和，只能导致局势的轮番升级，甚至失控。因此，我们对此持反对态度。关于这个奥库斯问题，中方已经在不同的场合多次阐述了我们的观点，而且我相信受到了多数国家的支持。这个三国之间的协议违反了核不扩散条约的宗旨和原则，将开创一个非常危险的先例。我们再次呼吁三国，美英澳三国谨慎行事，避免加剧亚太地区的紧张局势，影响全球的防扩散努力。我注意到这个伍德大使刚才没有对我关于这个美国在菲律宾部署陆基中岛的这个问题做出回应。我想再次强调，陆基中岛是进攻性武器，一旦抵近部署，极易引发战略误判。显著增加地区国家的不安全感，推高军备竞赛，推动地区军备竞赛和军事冲突的风险，将最终损害所有国家的安全利益，包括美国在亚太地区的盟友。我们希望美国能够正视地区国家的呼声，纠正错误做法，彻底放弃在亚太部署陆基中岛的计划。我们也希望美国 在亚太地区的盟友在这一问题上能够发挥建设性作用。谢谢。
I thank the representative of China for their statement. The representative of the Russian Federation has asked for the floor to make a further statement. I give them the floor.
Благодарю, госпожа председатель. Хотела бы кратко ответить на ремарки представителя США и призвать его внимательно слушать наши выступления в Совете Безопасности. Сегодня мы представили свои оценки ситуации на Корейском полуострове, отношение к нынешнему заседанию, а также ответили на вопросы по поводу российско-северокорейского сотрудничества. Мы высказали озабоченность относительно ситуации на Корейском полуострове и указали, что Соединенные Штаты Америки и поддерживающие их страны являются основным источником этой напряженности и ведут дело к эскалации и опасной черте. Для того, чтобы наши тезисы были более понятны представителю США, я обязательно, как только будет переведено наше заявление на английский язык, направлю его в индивидуальном порядке. Я благодарю за внимание.
I thank the representative of the Russian Federation for their statement. The representative of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea has asked for the floor to make a further statement. I give them the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I won't take a floor to respond the comment made by U.S. delegation. All the resolutions against DPRK adopted at the Security Council so far are deliberately fabricated by the United States based on the hostile policy toward the DPRK without any legal ground. Those resolutions are only the product of a hostile policy. Therefore, we neither recognize nor accept those resolutions, and I'm saying that this meeting is also unlawful. All the military action taken by DPRK, including the launch of the ICBM, its exercise of the legitimate and inalienable rights as a sovereign state to safeguard the sovereignty and national interest from nuclear threat from the United States. Today, the nuclear threat of the United States against DPRK has already reached a critical point in terms of its scale and dangerous level. Actually, the landscape of security Korean Peninsula has come closer, ever more dangerous phase due to reckless joint military exercise of the United States and ROK and the expansion military bloc led by the United States and its evolution, nuclear-based military bloc in nature. Exactly. Last year, United States framed up nuclear consultative group. Those mission is jointly plan, operate, and execute nuclear attack against DPRK. Evidence of this year, July, United States signed nuclear war program with ROK, the titled Guideline for Nuclear Deterrence and Nuclear Operation on Korean Peninsula, and adopted a memorandum of cooperation on the U.S., Japan, ROK, trilateral security cooperation framework. This year alone, United States and ROK conducted large-scale joint military drill against DPRK as much as 13 times with various code names like Ulchi Freedom Shield, Freedom Edge, Freedom Flag, Sangyeong, Combined Air Drill, etc. They mobilize all kinds of the sophisticated offensive weapon system. By staging even nuclear war simulation drill against the DPRK. Furthermore, under the pretext of the strengthening alliance, United States constantly fabricate and expand political military bloc system one after another, like the Quad and Squid, like this. Due to reckless moves of the United States, current Korean peninsula situation is approaching to the brink of the war. So if the Security Council is a responsible organ maintaining international peace and security, should take this issue first. I thank you.
I thank the representative of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea for their statement. The representative of the United States has asked for the floor to make a further statement. I give them the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I will be very, very brief here. I greatly appreciate the offer from the representative of the Russian Federation to obtain a copy of her statement, but that really isn't necessary. I heard the statement, as did others in this room, but the one question still remains that that statement does not address, and that is whether there are DPRK troops on the ground in Russia. And my question still stands, and I hope that the Russian Federation will answer that simple question. Thank you.
I thank the representative of the United States for their statement. The representative of the Russian Federation has asked for the floor to make a further statement. I give them the floor.
Мы здесь находимся не в суде, и на вопросы Соединенных Штатов Америки в духе допросов отвечать не намерены.
I thank the representative of the Russian Federation for their statement. There are no more names inscribed on the list of speakers. The meeting is adjourned.